Welcome back, everybody. It is no secret, ladies, we are all exhausted. The pandemic has pushed women specifically to the breaking point, both professionally and personally. Our next guests, they are twin sisters, and they're actually tackling this very topic in their new book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. Please welcome to the show sex educator Emily Nagoski and associate professor of music, Amelia Nagoski. Welcome.
Hello, thanks.
We're excited to have you here. And to start off, you both decided to write this book after Amelia ended up in the hospital twice for burnout. So Amelia, can you tell us about that experience and how it led you to team up with your sister?
Yeah, I was in grad school. I was getting my doctorate in conducting, and classical music is a highly male-dominated field, and that stress from that program, which is so misogynist, not to mention the fact that I was, working 3 part-time jobs and being a stepmother to 3 teenagers and commuting 65. It was under a lot of stress. So yeah, I was hospitalized twice with no diagnosis they could find. They told me it was stress and I should go home and relax. And instead, my sister brought me peer-reviewed science and books that talk about the actual science of stress and explain what goes on physically in your body. None of those books connected what happened in my body to the experience of outside my body of all those stressors I couldn't control. So that's what we wanted to include in the book.
Emily, can you explain the science behind sort of the stress response cycle, which is one of the first lessons in the book, like this idea that the biological cycle explains how and why our bodies experience stress? What does it do to our bodies?
Oh, yeah. So most of us have learned about like the fight or flight response, which is more comprehensively fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's this evolutionarily adaptive response in our bodies, adrenaline and cortisol and all that stuff, that increases our heart rate. It increases our respiration rate. It reduces our digestion. It reduces our hormones, our reproductive systems. Every single biological system is impacted when our brain perceives a threat. It activates all this stuff. But the thing about stress is that it's a biological cycle with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as long as we get all the way to the end, that, like digestion, Amelia does not love it when I use this example, but digestion has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? You just got to get all the way to the end and everything is fine.
You are all saying that burnout happens when that cycle that Emily was describing isn't closed. We don't finish the cycle, and therefore this is when the thing that we know as burnout happens. So therefore, how can we either, I don't know if the question is reduce stress in the first place or complete the cycle?
You want to complete the stress response cycle. You don't need to eliminate or even reduce stress necessarily. Stress isn't bad for you. It's getting stuck in the cycle that's bad for you. So how you complete the stress response cycle, there are lots of ways, thank goodness. The most efficient, of course, because this is the fight or flight response, the most efficient is going to be physical activity. You fight, you fly, you dance it out to Beyonce, you stretch it out to yoga, you do whatever it is that tells your body that you are safe. You can't dance to Beyonce unless your body knows you're safe, right? I was very glad to learn that belly laughter, not like polite social laughter, but like actual out of control laughter. Actual out of control laughter tells your body that it is safe when you sort of like are beyond your own social control, a little bit ridiculous, a little bit embarrassing. That kind of laughter gets you through a stress response cycle. And also sharing affection with other people, something as simple as a friendly exchange with your barista. Hi, I'd like a vanilla chai latte, and I like your earrings. And they say, here's your vanilla chai latte. Thank you very much. That'll do it. But if you want to go deeper, there's John Gottman's research talks about the 6-second kiss, which is not about the 6 seconds. It's about being close enough to someone you love and trust enough to kiss for 6 seconds, long enough to be a moment. Not late enough, not long enough to make the kids late for school, is how he describes it. And if maybe you don't have a person like that in your life, a 20-second hug. Someone you can be with, support your own center of gravity, put your arms around each other, and your body senses, I am home and I am safe. The next one is a big old cry. It's the same physiological cycle, that moment when you feel like you have to go lock yourself in the bathroom at work or just sit in your car and hide for a minute and just bawl your eyes out until it just goes away and you feel better after a good cry. That's why this works. A good night's sleep. People say you'll feel better in the morning. Just rest on it. But why? The problem won't change in the morning, but you change. Your body changes, your physiological state changes, your brain processes information and feelings and makes everything different because you are in a place of safety where you can respond better to whatever the stressors are.
I want to talk about biology still with Emily. Can you explain the science behind why women process stress differently than men?
Well, the science isn't sure yet, but there is some fascinating rat research that I use to talk about the ways that men and women may differ. For example, researchers stress rats out in a laboratory and they drop them into a tank of water to see how long they'll continue to swim with different levels of stress, male rats and female rats. And if you had to guess, who swims longer when they're very stressed out? Male rats or female rats?
Female.
Yeah, male rats' swim times drop in half within a week of being stressed out. Female rats never drop to the same shortness as the male rats. It seems like even female rats #persist.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's dig a little deeper into how men and women express emotion, because most people would think expressing anger is a negative thing, but you suggest it can actually be positive when it comes to relieving stress. Amelia, can you explain that?
Sure. This kind of is rooted in a large-scale social force that we describe as human giver syndrome. Human giver syndrome is the false belief that women have a moral obligation to be at all times pretty, happy, calm, generous, and attentive to the needs of others. And if they at any time fail in their moral obligation to be pretty, happy, calm, generous, and attentive to the needs of others, then they deserve to be punished because it's their job to attend to men. Now, this is a cartoonish black and white example. Of course, it's more sophisticated, more nuanced than this, but on a large scale. This hurts women because it means that we'll be punished if we express anything like anger or sadness or like that we have a need of our own. It's also a toxic system for men who are not then allowed to express their more tender emotions like affection, love for their children, enthusiasm for something besides sports, right? They're not allowed to be excited about how great a color looks, for example. And this system of control over who's allowed to express which emotions is unfair to all of us. It makes us all stuck in the various tunnels.
Emily, I want to move now to the pandemic specifically because women have borne the brunt. We see this in data everywhere, have borne the brunt of this pandemic in pretty much every way that you can measure. At least 20,000 women leaving the workforce in Canada. Over half of the frontline workers, essential workers, are women. They're still bearing the brunt of everything in the house, whether it is caregiving for their children or elderly parents, whatever it may be. So what have you found about how this pandemic has actually exacerbated burnout for women?
Pandemic has been like ink in the cracks of our society. It has just highlighted everything that was already unstable, because the difference between women and men is even more significant when we look at the difference between white women and women of color who are struggling even more than white women are. Women have been put back to the equivalent of the economic world of the 1980s, would have been familiar to our own mother. So the ways that we show up in the world, because systemically we're less likely to be paid as much as our husbands if we're in heterosexual marriages. And so whose job is it then to stay home with the kids if they have to be homeschooled? Well, the person who makes less money, right? And so the person who stays home loses progress in their professional lives, and then they have to start at a further back place. So we have lost years of women's progress.
And Amelia, here's the funny thing. We hear the buzzword self-care a lot, as if people think that that is the antidote to burnout. But you actually say that it is not the fix, but caring for one another is. Can you explain that?
Self-care is like a fallout shelter. You build it in your backyard because somebody tells you it's your job to protect yourself from nuclear war. And if you have those resources, by all means, please do that. But if you're going to come out of the fallout shelter, what kind of world are you going to be living in? I think we're all going to live in a better world if we all have equal access to that kind of safety and protection. So the only cure for burnout can possibly be all of us caring for each other. So when we all care for each other, all turn toward each other's difficult feelings and needs and biological requirements with kindness and compassion, and tell each other we deserve care, we deserve to take resources for ourselves, that's when the bubble bath and the manicure and the good night's sleep and getting enough exercise is really going to be curative and restorative and healing.
Oh my gosh, what a fascinating, absolutely fascinating discussion. Emily and Amelia, we thank you both for joining us. What a great analogy. It's moving from that me to the we for sure. Thank you so much for joining us. And we want to remind everybody their book is entitled Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. It is available everywhere. Go out and get yourself a copy. We'll be back.